What is up, ladies and gentlemen? It has been a while. And got a real big show planned for you guys and gals today. Got a little bit of an announcement to kind of get the show started. But for those of you that do not know, my name is Ryan Turbo Jackson, and I am your insurance resource. And in videos like today, I like to explain coverages, point out gaps in coverage, but this is kind of an all-inclusive type thing. We're going to be talking about common mistakes made on whether it's your home insurance, your auto insurance, or if you're a business owner. So stay tuned because I'm going to break it down, and this might be something that applies to you. But like I said, before we get started, yes, it has been a while, and I do need to become this needs to become more regular, like it was. So let's just get back on the horse. Let's rip the Band-Aid off. But before we do, like I said, I do have a pretty big announcement. Here at Abbott and Powers, we have a preferred lender that we like to work with. It's American Financial Network, and when you think of lenders with your home, you usually think, okay, well, buying a home, but it's more than that. They're whether you're looking, I'm reading off a list here so I don't forget anything. If you're interested in lowering your monthly payments, consolidating high interest debt, accessing equity for home projects, purchasing another property, helping a child build or buy their first home, or simply a mortgage review. They do it all. They do it all, and we are proud to partner with them because you know what? You guys and gals trust us with ensuring your biggest asset. So let us introduce you to folks that we know and love. And speaking of which, Johnny Fowler is going to be on the show here in the next couple weeks, so I can introduce him as well as give more background with American Financial Network and some of the services that they can offer you fine folks. So with that being said, let's jump into today's show. We're going to be talking about the 10 biggest insurance mistakes. I pointed out home, auto, and business. And that's each one of them kind of have their own little nuances, but I have a very good feeling that today when you woke up and you're sitting, sipping your morning coffee, you're like, you know what? I feel like making a huge mistake on my insurance. I have a very good feeling that that wasn't the case, but hopefully after this video, you're like, you know what? There was something in there that Ryan brought up that I really do need to address, or maybe we're going to be talking about something that maybe you didn't think of. So let's get into the first one. First one and the biggest one is going to be you bought your policy on price. And I know in today's economy, that the day and age that we're in, everything is so expensive. But one of my early trainers said that when it comes to insurance, you pay twice. You pay up front, which is your monthly premium, and then you pay your deductible once something happens. So it's part of my job not only to give you the best service that we can, the best coverage that we can, but something that ultimately fits your budget. And by budget, I mean those two things. You can afford your premium, and what most people really kind of put on the back burner is the deductible. So we're talking home, auto, doesn't really matter. If you have $1,000 deductible on your home policy, you should really have $1,000 on hand or in the bank. And same with your auto, comp and collision. If you have $100 comp, $500 collision, you should have $500 just in case something happens. So just a really good rule of thumb. Another thing is when it comes down to the premium, yes, a $900 policy might look very similar to an $1,100 policy, but you want to ask yourself some questions. What are the liability limits? On the $900 policy, it might be the state minimum of $100,000. On the quote that I might send over, it might have a $500,000 liability limit. Now, if you've been following for any amount of time, liability, think lawsuit. So on either your home, auto, or business, make sure your liabilities limits are not at the state minimums. On the $900 policy, does it include replacement cost? If not, that's a huge thing. That's a huge thing, especially with the cost of materials and labor fluctuating as it is. That definitely needs to be addressed. Are there any other important endorsements that's causing this $1,100 policy to be more expensive up front, but would provide more coverage and provide, on some endorsements that we put on policies, it takes the deductible for certain items from your policy deductible, say 1,000, and gives you a $250 deductible. So again, a little bit more upfront to kind of buy back some coverage and lower that deductible, so it would ultimately save you some money in the long run. And again, the deductible. We're seeing a lot of times where companies are going to a percentage deductible instead of just a flat deductible, or there's a deductible for all perils, and then there's a separate deductible for wind and hail. And the wind and hail is usually bigger than the standard policy deductible. So take a peek at that. And especially if you do have one of the deductibles that is the percentage, what I mean by percentage is if you have your home has a dwelling coverage of 200,000, and if your policy has a 1% disc or a 1% deductible, that your deductible is going to be 2,000. So let's say in next year your dwelling coverage increases to 250,000. Well, that 1% deductible is going to go up from 2,000 to 2,500. So a lot of time, in some cases, as the dwelling cost or the dwelling coverage increases, which, like we talked about, the fluctuation in labor and materials, that happens. That happens all the time. So you might not even be aware if something happens. When you started the policy, you might have had an $1,100 deductible, but now everything costing more, now your deductible is closer to 2,000 or 2,500. So it makes a huge difference. Makes a huge difference. Mistake number 2, never reviewing your policy. And this is something we get all the time. Many people haven't looked at their policy in years, in particularly their home policy. Maybe you've remodeled your kitchen, bought expensive jewelry, added a pole barn, got married, bought a camper, started working from home. Your insurance should change with your life. Anytime there's a big purchase, renovation, at least make the call. Because especially like if we're talking jewelry, landscaping equipment, things of that nature, to individually insure those things are pennies on the dollar when it comes to the actual the coverage you're going to pay for. So that can be a very inexpensive way to take that item out of your personal property coverage and have its own line on the policy. And with stuff like that, we can adjust the deductibles lower, so you're not at that total policy deductible. So, and another huge thing, especially when it comes to homes, people tend to put their homes in the name of a trust, which is fine. I highly recommend that, but let your insurance agent know so that they can update the home policy to reflect that. Because once you put the home in the trust, you no longer own the home, the trust does. So when it comes to actual insurability, you don't own the home anymore. The trust does. The trust needs to be listed on the home policy so that when something does happen, or in the event that both people in the trust have passed and it's gone down to the next generation, everything can go a whole lot smoother. So anytime there's a change like that, anytime you've updated a lender, which normally the lenders are pretty good at getting a hold of us and letting us know, but and same with if you've added a pole building or one of the buildings from Home Depot or anything like that. We mentioned any extensive remodeling, adding decks, anything like that, let us know so we can update your policy. So in the event that something does happen, everybody's on the same page. You, me, the insurance company, we're all good to go, and it streamlines the process when it does come claim time, so that I can help you the best that I can, and the the adjuster knows exactly what you're dealing, or what he or her are dealing with, so that, again, something happens, you want to get it fixed in a timely manner. This helps that. This helps that. So number 3, we kind of talked about state minimums. State minimums is more geared towards the auto side, in particular when it comes to your bodily injury limits. Bodily injury limits is the liability coverage for your auto policy. If you're carrying state minimums here in Michigan, it's $50,000 per person, $100,000 per occurrence. And as you can imagine, if there ever was a lawsuit because of something that happened out on the road, $50,000 isn't going to get you very far with legal fees or settlements that are brought down upon you. So, and in the long run, if you bump up to that 250, 500, or even 500, it's not that much more expensive. It's one of those, you're trying to rub 2 pennies together to get a nickel type thing. So is it more expensive up front? Yes. But if something were to happen and there is a lawsuit leveraged against you, you're going to look back and go, dang, I wish I would have paid, $2 or $3 more a month and upgraded that, so I wouldn't have to come up with $200,000 out of my pocket. Just a thought. Let's see here. Yep, did that. And we kind of touched on this one too, when wrong deductibles. I know we do this all the time. Client will call in like, "Hey Ryan, bought a new vehicle or want to replace a vehicle." I'm like, "Okay, do you want to put the same coverages that we had on the old vehicle, or that you're currently carrying on the active vehicle?" And they say, "Well, this is a newer vehicle, so it's going to cost more, so let's raise the deductibles." And it's like, which we can, by all means. But that means you have to reach that threshold for the higher deductible before anything becomes a claim situation. And on top of that, like I mentioned before, a lot of people carry higher deductibles but don't have the money in the bank to actually pay the deductible when something happens. Because keep in mind, whether it's home, auto, business, doesn't matter. If there's a claim, when the insurance company cuts the check for any repairs that are going to be made, your deductible is taken out of that check. So it's non-existent. You have to fill the gap. So again, part of my job is to help you guys kind of navigate this, pay a little bit more up front and less when something happens, or pay less up front and a little bit more when something happens. So it's kind of a dance that we have to do, if you will. The next one here, this is mistake number 5. Assuming that all home policies have flood coverage, when in actuality, none of them do. And I get this question, I'm not going to say quite frequently, but a little bit more than I would have expected, because, and this isn't just a Michigan thing, this is all policies countrywide, unless the insurance company adds that on later. So keep this in mind. Especially, we've had a lot of rain. Even a couple years ago, we had some basements flood here in Marcellus. So we had to tell some folks that, or the adjuster had to tell them that it was a flood. And when most people think of floods, they think of catastrophe. They think of the river cresting, and there's blocks and blocks of just water, instead of localized, where a flood in the insurance terms means water from the outside coming in. So even if if it's a torrential downpour, your gutters fail because they just can't keep up, and the water from the outside seeps into your basement, that's technically a flood. It doesn't have to be, the lake got astronomically higher, or the river or creek or whatever. It could even be your neighbor's swimming pool having a leak in the liner, which drains into your basement. That is a flood. So flood instances are not covered on a traditional home policy. Like Auto Owners has an inland flood endorsement we can pick up that provides some coverages for certain things, but it's if you're really worried about that, especially if you're not. And I always get this like, well, Ryan, we're not in a flood zone. Why would I need a flood policy? Well, for all the examples I just gave, but it's also beneficial because you're not in a floodplain, so the actual flood coverage is very inexpensive compared to the coverage that you're going to get. And the best part is that if you do purchase a flood policy, it stays on the home. So if you were to sell the home, you can transfer that for the same premium to the new owner, and that's regardless if you're in a floodplain or not. And let's say that in the next 2 or 3 years, FEMA comes through and redoes the maps, and Marcellus becomes not necessarily a floodplain, but a more active or potentially active flood area. Then you're grandfathered in, so that $300 a year policy, once FEMA changes the maps, can drastically increase the price of that policy. But if you get it prior, you're grandfathered in, and then again, if you do happen to sell the home, that can be a huge selling point because that policy is already in place. We can just transfer the names. So, is it a little bit super proactive? Yes. Is it something that I recommend to everyone? Not necessarily. But if you do happen to live near a lake, stream, or river, always a good idea at least to get a quote so you kind of know premium-wise where you stand. Number 6 is my favorite, forgetting about umbrella insurance. If you followed me for any amount of time, you know I'm a huge proponent of an umbrella policy. And I was just talking to a client last week, and she was like, well, I really don't know if I need this because it's just my husband and I, and we have a home and no one really comes on our property. And I'm like, well, that's fine. I said, and I explained to her what it was. It's an excess liability policy that goes above your home and your auto liability limits. And if something were to happen and the cost of the legal fees or the settlements exceeds the limits on those policies, this would kick in and provide an extra $1 million worth of coverage. And for a lot of people, not a lot of people, most all of us, $1 million is a lot of money. But when you're paying a couple $100 a year for that, and it's an additional discount on your home and auto, where that discount normally covers most, if not all, of that umbrella policy. So it's actually cheaper to have all 3 policies as compared to the initial 2. To me, that's kind of a no-brainer. Now, again, that's not for every company. Just the companies we work with do provide discounts for stuff like that. But, and the biggest thing is, I always tell people, I would much rather write a check for $300 a year than trying to write a check for $1 million. One of them's going to clear free and easy. The other one's going to bounce so high. So I would much rather have the insurance company write a check for $1 million than try to have it come out of my bank account, because it ain't coming out of my bank account. Mistake number 7, and this is one that we're getting a lot, and I definitely appreciate it. Folks not taking a look at the replacement cost on their home. RCE it stands for replacement cost estimator. I normally don't like to use acronyms, but for the sake of the graphic, it's way easier to put RCE than replacement cost estimator. So that's where we're at. Because in particular, our book of business is rather old. It's been with us for quite a while. And when those policies were initially written, yes, there was a replacement cost estimator done, but that would have been 20 years ago, and the cost of, again, labor and materials has changed drastically in 20 years. Now, the newer policies that we've written here in the last handful of years, those can be pretty accurate still. But as far as if you've had your home policy with the same company, the same agent, give them a call. And just ask me, like, hey, I would really like to, I would really like to discuss the dwelling coverage on my home. Can you run a new replacement cost estimator? And I'm sure they would be happy to, because we do it here all the time. Now, keep in mind, the more dwelling coverage your policy has, the more premium you're going to have. But if it raises it, $100 or $200 a year for $50,000 worth of coverage, if something were to happen, it'd be easier for me to come up with the $200 out of pocket as compared to trying to come up with, $50,000 for sure. So again, paying a little bit more up front to paying a whole lot less at the end. So this next one here, it can be tricky. You just assume that your personal auto covers business use. Now, we see this a lot and in particular here at the office, I'm going to expand business use to farm use as well. So we have to take a look at who's on the title, because if the vehicle's titled in your business name, it needs to be on a business policy. If it's titled to the farm, it has to be on a farm policy. Now, the ones that can get kind of tricky is if you're like a photographer, real estate agent. There are some companies that will let us use it, put a designation on it that it is for business use, even though it's titled into your personal name. So kind of that kind of exposure is company by company. So if you do have a question, please reach out to your agent and let them know exactly what you're doing with that vehicle. Because if there is an accident and you have a bunch of, let's take a real estate agent for example. If you have a bunch of signs in the back of your SUV and you're going and putting homes for sale signs out to your new listings, would there be coverage? I don't know. It's kind of one of those gray areas. If you're a contractor using your personal truck to go, take tools or materials to the job site, and if there was an accident on the way to the job site, if it's not listed for business use, then there could be no coverage. And, we talk about, Uber, Lyft, any of the delivery drivers. Most companies nowadays do have an endorsement where we can just tack that on. So again, if you are, any Shipt drivers, or even if you're doing deliveries for Walmart, anything like that, that's something you want to communicate to your agent, because if you're using a vehicle for business, you might be entering a situation where if something happens, there would be zero coverage. So again, paying a little bit more up front, a lot less at the end, because if you don't pay that little bit up front, you're going to be paying a lot, because you're going to be paying the full amount, because there wouldn't be any coverage. Let's continue on the business trail here. Just thinking your business policy covers everything. Every business is different. You could have two contractors that do two totally different things that have two totally different needs. So when you have a business policy, you have to ask yourself, do I have any tools? What about trailers? Do I have any employees? Am I handling or taking or transporting any of my customers' property with me? Do I have any computers? Giving professional advice, or even doing online sales? Each one of those has its own risk. So you want to make sure that if your business does any of that, you want to make sure that it's covered. And add on top of that, if you do have a brick and mortar building, you want to make sure that the limits of that building and all the coverages it needs, so that again, when something happens, you're properly covered. So just because you have a package policy or a business policy doesn't mean that everything is covered. It's not a blanket. So make sure that you're communicating what you do, how you do it, and as much information as you can to your agent when they're quoting that, or if it's already in place, give them a jingle and get a policy review. And speaking of which, that is number 10. Number 10, you never ask questions. And this could be the biggest mistake of all. Everyone's like, well, we get this all the time. I have a silly question, or this might be a stupid question, or I really hate to bother you, but I would like to know. First of all, you're never bothering us. That's our job, okay? So Good questions to ask. What's my biggest coverage gap? Are there any coverage gaps? What claim surprises people the most? If you're insuring your family, what would you recommend? Has anything changed that I should know about? And that is the biggest one, because insurance companies are changing things all the time. And they normally send some sort of communication, whether that's an email or in snail mail, which I know all of you, read every single email and open every single piece of mail. I know you do. Come on now. Come on. So that's your cue to call your agent and have that conversation with them, because like I said, that's their job. That's their job. So that's the that's all 10 of these. That's all 10 of these. So in closing, insurance isn't about expecting bad things to happen. It's about making sure you're prepared if they do. If today's conversation made you realize, like, it's been a while. It's been a while since I've had someone look at this. That's really the whole purpose of this, is kind of get the juices flowing. Get the juices flowing. So go ahead and leave any questions. Whether it's you can, let me find my slide here. You can leave a message here on Facebook. You can comment, give the office a call. Here is my my email here at the office. This is what we do. This is what we do. Even if you're not with us and you'd like me to take a look and see kind of see it with a fresh set of eyes, whether you come to us or not, I'd be happy to review it for you. So that's kind of it here. And again, I'll throw this I'll throw this contact info up yet again. If you are interested in any of the services from American Financial Network, let me know and I will get you in contact with them. And like I said, Johnny will be joining us here on the show. It might be pre-recorded. I don't know. I haven't pinned down a time yet, or it might be a live show at a different time than 10:30s on Tuesday. So just kind of stay abreast of that. Keep an eye on us over here. And I will leave you with that. Everyone have a great week. The weather should be fantastic as compared to last week. And I hope everyone that has been without power has gotten their power back. Or if you haven't, I pray it comes on as soon as it can. So everyone have a great week. I will see you next time.